close your eyes for a moment and imagine holding in your hands the most complex object in the known universe. It's soft, almost jelly-like, weighing a little over 3 pounds. Yet inside this fragile organ lies the sum of who you are. Your thoughts, your memories, your fears, and your dreams. This is the human brain, a structure so intricate that even the most powerful supercomputers pale in comparison. And tonight, as we drift into this journey together, we'll explore its hidden landscapes, its elegant architecture, and the quiet physiology that keeps you alive, second by second. The story of the brain begins at its surface, where the outer shell hides a world of mysteries. And as we peel back those first layers, you'll discover that even the wrinkles on its surface tell a story waiting to be heard. The first thing you notice about the brain is its folded appearance, an intricate pattern of ridges and grooves. These folds are not random. Each ridge, called a gyrus, and each groove, called a sulcus, increases the brain's surface area. Without them, the brain would have to be impossibly large to contain all of its neurons. In a way, the wrinkles of the brain are like the rings of a tree, each one holding secrets about growth, adaptation, and survival. They are nature's clever solution for fitting immense power into a small, protected skull. And if the wrinkles themselves hide meaning, imagine what lies just beneath them. This outer shell is known as the cerebral cortex, and it is the seat of higher thought. Here is where language forms, where decisions are made, and where imagination blooms. If the brain were a grand city, the cortex would be its bustling downtown, a place where billions of neurons light up like city blocks at night, passing signals faster than any network we've ever built. And yet, within this noise of activity, there is rhythm, like the steady beat of a hidden drum. The question is, how does this city stay in balance, never losing its rhythm? The cortex is divided into 4 main lobes, each with its own personality, its own story to tell. At the front, the frontal lobe acts as the conductor of an orchestra, guiding decisions, controlling movement, and shaping personality. Behind it, the parietal lobe interprets the physical world, allowing you to know where your body ends and the outside world begins. Toward the back, the occipital lobe transforms light into vision, turning mere photons into sunsets and starry skies. And at the sides, the temporal lobes translate vibrations in the air into music, into language, into memory. These lobes are like continents, each one with a unique culture, yet deeply connected to the others. And the more we explore these continents, the more we realize that their borders are not as fixed as we might think. Think of the frontal lobe for a moment. This is where personality resides, where ambition sparks, and where restraint holds you back from acting on impulse. Damage here can transform a person completely, as in the famous story of Phineas Gage, the railroad worker whose accident changed him from a responsible man into a reckless wanderer. The tale reminds us that the brain is not just tissue, it is identity itself. And if a single region can alter the soul so profoundly, What other secrets lie hidden deeper inside? The parietal lobe tells another story. It is here that your brain constructs a map of your body, a map so detailed that you can close your eyes and still know where your hands and feet are. This is your sensory cortex, a strip of tissue that receives signals from every inch of your skin. A touch on your finger, a brush on your cheek, the coolness of air against your arm. Each sensation is captured and translated here. Yet the map is not equal. Your hands, your lips, your face take up far more space than your legs or your back, because the brain devotes more attention to regions that demand fine detail. And in that strange, distorted map of the body, we glimpse the brain's priorities: survival, communication, and connection. The occipital lobe is a silent translator, hidden at the very back of your head. When light enters your eyes, it is nothing more than scattered photons. Yet, in a fraction of a second, the occipital lobe transforms this chaos into vision. It takes dots and colors, edges and shadows, and weaves them into shapes, movement, and meaning. It is here that you recognize a face, trace the curve of a horizon, or gaze at a star. Without this small region, the world would dissolve into formless light. And isn't it extraordinary that what you see is not the world itself, but the brain's careful painting of reality? Then, at the sides of your brain, the temporal lobes hold the keys to memory and sound. When you hear music, the vibrations enter your ear, but it is the temporal lobe that transforms them into melody, harmony, and rhythm. It is also where words become language and fleeting experiences become lasting memories. The hippocampus, tucked deep inside, acts like a librarian, filing away the stories of your life. Without it, moments slip away into nothingness, never recorded, never remembered. And when you realize that your very life story is written by this tiny piece of tissue, you begin to understand how fragile and how miraculous memory really is. The brain's outer landscape, with its lobes and maps, is a story of diversity and unity. Each part specializes, yet none can exist without the others. A thought, a movement, a memory, they all require the seamless collaboration of countless neurons spread across these regions. It is like an orchestra where violins, drums, and flutes play their unique roles, but together create something greater, the symphony of the mind. And yet, this symphony would collapse without the unseen forces working beneath the surface, deep inside the hidden chambers of the brain. If the cerebral cortex is the bustling city, then the deeper parts of the brain are its ancient foundations, the silent machinery that has been working for hundreds of millions of years, long before humans ever appeared. These are the hidden chambers, tucked away beneath the folds, where instinct lives, where emotion is born, and where survival is quietly ensured. While the outer cortex thinks, plans, and imagines, these deeper structures keep the heart beating, the lungs breathing, and the body balanced. It is here in the shadows of the mind that we meet the most primal parts of who we are. At the center of this hidden world lies the limbic system, often called the emotional brain. Imagine it as the theater where feelings are staged: love, fear, joy, and anger all taking their turns in the spotlight. Within this system, the amygdala plays the role of a vigilant guard. Small, almond-shaped, and buried deep within the temporal lobes, the amygdala is always watching for danger. When it senses threat, it floods the body with signals to fight or to flee. It is why your heart races when startled, why your palms sweat when nervous. Without it, fear would vanish, but so too would caution. And when you realize how much of your behavior is quietly shaped by this tiny almond of tissue, you begin to sense the invisible strings of biology pulling at the stage of your life. Close by, the hippocampus works in tandem with the amygdala, but its role is different. It is the keeper of memory. Picture a librarian moving through endless shelves, carefully storing away the day's experiences and retrieving them when needed. The hippocampus makes learning possible, stitching together fragments of sight, sound, and feeling into coherent memories. Without it, each moment would vanish as quickly as it appeared. There are people who have lived with damaged hippocampi, and for them life is an eternal present, unable to recall yesterday, unable to imagine tomorrow. And so, within this seahorse-shaped structure lies the continuity of self, the thread that ties your past to your present, and your present to your future. But the limbic system does more than guard and remember. It weaves together emotion and memory, shaping how experiences are stored. That is why moments of fear or joy are etched more deeply than ordinary days. The first time you fell in love, the sound of your favorite childhood song, the sting of an early heartbreak. These are not just memories, but living echoes, preserved with emotional color. And it is this coloring of memory that gives life its richness, transforming simple facts into the story of who you are. Beneath these emotional centers lies the brainstem, perhaps the most ancient and essential part of the brain. If the cortex is the thinker and the limbic system is the feeler, then the brainstem is the guardian of life itself. It is the narrow stalk that connects the brain to the spinal cord, and it controls the most basic rhythms: breathing, heartbeat, swallowing, even the act of waking and sleeping. Imagine for a moment that the rest of the brain could fall silent. The brainstem would still keep the body alive, quietly ticking like the heartbeat of a clock. It is a reminder that survival does not always require thought. Sometimes it only requires rhythm. And when you realize that your very breath is orchestrated here, you feel the hum of ancient life pulsing beneath the layers of human thought. The brainstem is divided into three parts: the midbrain, the pons, and the medulla oblongata. The midbrain acts like a switchboard, routing sensory information and controlling reflexes, helping you turn your head when you hear a sound or adjust your eyes when light changes suddenly. The pons is like a bridge, connecting different regions and coordinating movements, especially those of the face. And the medulla, sitting at the base, is the ultimate life support system, regulating heart rate, blood pressure, and breathing. Damage here is often fatal, a reminder of how fragile this foundation is. And yet, it is also the most resilient, capable of working tirelessly from the moment of birth until the final breath. Behind the brainstem, nestled like a hidden jewel, lies the cerebellum, Latin for little brain. At first glance, it seems unassuming, a smaller structure tucked away at the back of the skull. But its role is profound. The cerebellum is the master of coordination and balance. Every step you take, every movement of your hand, every delicate brushstroke or graceful dance relies on its calculations. It constantly fine-tunes your actions, ensuring that muscles work in harmony, like instruments playing in perfect time. Without it, movement becomes clumsy, uncertain, and chaotic. And so, the little brain reminds us that mastery lies not in thought alone, but in the seamless flow of body and mind. Interestingly, the cerebellum may also play a role in thought itself. New research suggests it contributes to language, planning, and even emotion, expanding its influence far beyond movement. This discovery is a humbling reminder that the brain rarely confines itself to neat categories. Functions overlap, regions cooperate, and roles evolve. And in this hidden dance, the brain shows us that it is never static, but always adapting, always more complex than we believed. Together, the limbic system, brainstem, and cerebellum form the brain's inner sanctum, the core that sustains life, fuels emotion, and ensures movement. They are not the parts of the brain that write poetry or solve equations, but they are the reason poetry and equations are possible at all. They remind us that the foundation of being human lies not only in thinking, but in feeling, breathing, remembering, and moving. And yet, even deeper mysteries await, because within this organ of flesh and electricity, the very cells that make up its structure hold secrets far more astonishing than the regions they form. If the outer cortex and deeper structures are like landscapes, then the true story of the brain unfolds at a much smaller scale. Imagine diving down, past the folds of the cortex, through the gray matter, and into a microscopic forest. Here, billions of tiny trees stretch their branches, reaching out in every direction. These are neurons, the brain's fundamental units, cells that carry thoughts the way wires carry electricity. Each one is small, but together they form a network so vast that it outnumbers the stars in our galaxy. And when you realize that every thought you've ever had was nothing more than patterns within this forest, you begin to sense the immensity of what lies beneath. A single neuron is a marvel of design. At its center lies the cell body or soma, containing the nucleus, where the cell's blueprint is stored. From this body extend delicate branches called dendrites, like roots drinking in information from nearby cells. And from the opposite end stretches a long, slender cable called the axon, sometimes covered in a fatty sheath known as myelin. This sheath works like insulation on a wire, allowing signals to travel faster, leaping in small jumps instead of crawling steadily along. At the far end of the axon are synaptic terminals, the fingertips that reach out to touch other neurons. It is at these terminals that communication sparks to life. And in the quiet space between two cells lies one of the greatest mysteries of biology: the synapse. The synapse is the gap where neurons whisper to one another. But instead of words, they use chemicals called neurotransmitters. When an electrical signal races down the axon, it reaches the terminal and triggers the release of these chemicals. They cross the tiny gap and bind to receptors on the next cell, carrying the message forward. This process happens in less than 1,000th of a second, fast enough for thought, memory, and movement to unfold seamlessly. It is here that every idea is born, every decision made, every emotion felt. And when you think of it, your entire sense of self, your past, your identity, your dreams, rests in the fleeting dance of molecules across synapses. But neurons do not work alone. For every neuron, there are perhaps 10 glial cells, the often overlooked support network of the brain. For centuries, scientists thought glia were mere glue, holding neurons together. Yet now we know they are far more. Some glia, like astrocytes, regulate the environment around neurons, ensuring that signals can travel smoothly. Others, like oligodendrocytes, build the myelin sheath, wrapping axons with speed-enhancing insulation. Still others, called microglia, act as the brain's immune system, defending against invaders and clearing away debris. Without glia, neurons would falter, signals would fade, and the forest of thought would collapse. And so, in the background, these quiet helpers remind us that even brilliance requires support. The communication between neurons is not random. It forms networks of astonishing complexity. Some neurons specialize in carrying sensory information, like light, sound, or touch, from the outside world into the brain. Others send commands outward, controlling muscles and glands. Still others act as intermediaries, processing and integrating information, weaving countless signals into coherent meaning. In fact, the human brain is estimated to contain 86 billion neurons, each one forming thousands of connections. That's nearly a quadrillion synapses, far more than all the stars in the Milky Way. And within this cosmic web of connections lies the very essence of thought itself. One of the most astonishing abilities of neurons is their plasticity, their capacity to change, adapt, and grow. Unlike machines with fixed wiring, The brain is constantly rewiring itself. Every experience, every lesson, every memory leaves its mark on the neural forest. Synapses strengthen or weaken depending on how often they are used. New dendrites sprout like branches in spring, while unused ones wither away. This is how we learn a language, how we master an instrument, how we recover after injury. The brain is never static. It is a living story, written and rewritten every moment of your life. And when you realize that your very identity is shaped by this plasticity, you see that who you are is not fixed, but ever becoming. Electrical signals in neurons follow a simple but elegant principle known as the action potential. It begins when a neuron receives enough input from its neighbors to reach a threshold. Then, like a spark, the electrical charge races down the axon, opening tiny gates along the way. Ions, charged particles, rush in and out, creating a wave that moves with remarkable speed. This is how thought travels, how reflexes work in a blink, how you can recognize a face in less than half a second. Each spark is minuscule, but multiplied across billions of cells, it creates the symphony of consciousness. And yet, for all its power, this symphony is fragile, disrupted by disease, influenced by chemicals, and altered by even the smallest change in balance. Neurons also work in harmony with neurotransmitters, the brain's chemical language. Dopamine fuels reward and motivation. Serotonin shapes mood. Acetylcholine drives learning and memory, while glutamate excites and GABA calms. Each one plays a part in sculpting experience. Too little dopamine and motivation falters. Too much and delusion may arise. Imbalances of serotonin can cloud the mind with depression, while disruptions of acetylcholine contribute to Alzheimer's disease. These molecules are the ink with which the brain writes its story. And when you think about it, emotions, choices, even love itself are all painted with the brushstrokes of chemistry. The microscopic world of the brain is astonishing not just for its complexity, but for its elegance. Neurons and glia, sparks and chemicals, all weaving together to create perception, memory, thought, and identity. It is easy to forget that beneath every word spoken, every laugh shared, every tear shed lies a forest of cells whispering to one another in silence. They are invisible to the naked eye, yet they give rise to the visible world of human experience. And so, as we leave the microscopic forest behind, we are left with one haunting question. How does all this activity, all this electricity and chemistry, become the thing we call the mind? Imagine standing in a quiet forest. The air is cool, the leaves rustle, and sunlight flickers through the branches. In that moment, your senses come alive. Eyes capturing light, ears receiving vibrations, skin feeling the air's touch. Yet none of these sensations are the forest itself. They are only fragments, raw signals that must be translated by the brain. The brain does not see trees or hear wind. It receives photons and sound waves, electrical impulses and chemical messages. And from this chaos, it constructs a seamless reality. The forest you perceive is not outside of you. It is a world your brain carefully paints inside your mind. Let's begin with vision, the sense humans often prize most. Light enters the eye, strikes the retina, and triggers tiny photoreceptor cells. These cells, rods and cones, convert photons into electrical signals. But what enters the brain is not an image. It is coded information, a storm of signals sent to the occipital lobe at the back of your head. There, neurons assemble the pieces: edges, colors, motion, depth. Slowly, like a puzzle forming in real time, an image emerges. Yet even this image is not the world. It is the brain's best interpretation of the data it receives. Optical illusions remind us of this, showing how easily the brain can be tricked. And so what you see is not truth itself, but the story your brain chooses to tell. Hearing unfolds in a similar way. Vibrations in the air enter the ear canal, set the eardrum trembling, and ripple through tiny bones into the fluid-filled cochlea. Inside, hair cells bend with each vibration, turning sound into electrical signals. These signals travel to the temporal lobes, where they are decoded into pitch, rhythm, and meaning. But again, the brain does not hear sound directly, it reconstructs it. The same note can sound joyous in one moment and haunting in another, shaped not just by the vibration itself but by memory and emotion. And when you listen to music that moves you to tears, it is not the sound alone, but the brain's interpretation that stirs the soul. Touch, too, is more than sensation. It is perception. Nerve endings in the skin respond to pressure, temperature, and pain, sending signals to the parietal lobe's sensory cortex. But what you feel is not simply input. The brain filters and interprets it. A gentle breeze may feel soothing, while the same pressure in another context may feel alarming. Pain itself is not fixed. It can intensify with fear or diminish with distraction. Soldiers in battle have sometimes fought on with severe wounds, their brains muting pain for survival. And so, every touch you feel is not raw data but a story shaped by context, memory, and need. Even the sense of smell, often underestimated, reveals the brain's artistry. Tiny molecules enter the nose, bind to receptors, and send signals directly to the olfactory bulb. From there, they travel to the limbic system, skipping the usual relay through the thalamus. That is why smell is so powerfully linked to memory and emotion. The faint scent of a flower can carry you back decades to a forgotten moment of childhood. A whiff of smoke can trigger fear, even before thought arises. And in this direct connection between scent and memory, we glimpse the ancient roots of survival woven into the brain. Taste works hand in hand with smell, creating flavor. The tongue detects sweet, sour, salty, bitter, and umami. But the brain combines this with olfactory signals to craft the experience of a meal. Without smell, food loses much of its richness. Yet even here, the brain colors perception, turning a bitter medicine into something unpleasant, or making a once-hated flavor into a delicacy when paired with memory and culture. And so, even the act of eating is not just biology, but a dialogue between body, brain, and experience. But sensation alone is not enough. Perception requires attention, the brain's way of filtering the flood of signals into what matters most. Right now, countless inputs reach your brain. The feel of your chair, the sound in the room, the beating of your heart. Yet most fade into the background. The brain highlights only a few, guiding awareness where it is needed. This spotlight of attention is limited. Shift it one way, and another detail slips into darkness. And in this dance of focus and neglect, we realize that the reality we live in is only a fragment of what surrounds us. This brings us to the most elusive frontier, consciousness. What is it that turns electrical signals into experience, into the sense of I? Neurons fire, synapses pass signals, networks pulse with activity. Yet from this machinery emerges something no equation can fully capture: awareness. Scientists speak of brain waves, alpha, beta, delta rhythms that accompany different states of mind. They study networks like the default mode network, which becomes active when the mind drifts inward, wandering through memory and imagination. But the question remains, how does matter give rise to mind? And in that mystery lies perhaps the greatest puzzle of all biology. Consciousness is not constant, it ebbs and flows. In deep sleep, awareness fades, yet the brain still dreams. Under anesthesia, the world disappears, though neurons continue their quiet work. Even within waking life, consciousness shifts. Moments of sharp focus, moments of daydream, moments where time itself seems to vanish. Some scientists suggest consciousness arises from the integration of information, the brain weaving countless signals into a unified whole. Others propose it emerges from quantum processes within neurons themselves. No answer yet satisfies. And so, to ask what is consciousness is to stand at the edge of the known, peering into a mystery as vast as the cosmos. The journey from sensation to consciousness reveals something profound. The world you experience is not the world itself. It is the brain's creation, a private theater where signals are transformed into stories. Reality, as you know it, is a construction, fragile and unique. Two people may see the same scene, hear the same sound, yet perceive it differently. And in that difference lies the beauty of individuality. For if the brain is the author of reality, then each of us lives in a story that no one else can fully read. The brain is a paradox. It weighs just over a kilogram, yet it consumes an enormous share of the body's resources. Though it makes up only about 2% of your body weight, it demands nearly 20% of your oxygen and energy. Every spark across a neuron, every release of a neurotransmitter requires fuel. Glucose is its lifeblood, oxygen its constant companion. Without them, signals falter within seconds, and consciousness slips away. And when you realize how hungry the brain truly is, you begin to see that every breath you take and every meal you eat is, in some way, a gift to your own awareness. But energy alone is not enough. The brain also requires rest. Sleep is not wasted time, as many believe, but a vital process that sustains thought, memory, and life itself. During deep sleep, waves of electrical activity sweep through the brain, consolidating memories, pruning unnecessary connections, and strengthening the pathways that matter most. In REM sleep, the stage of dreams, the brain rehearses and reimagines, linking old experiences with new insights. Even more remarkable, the brain cleans itself while you sleep, flushing away toxins that build up during the day. Without this nightly housekeeping, the mind becomes clouded, decision-making falters, and eventually the body itself suffers. And so, when you close your eyes at night, you are not shutting down. You are entering the brain's most profound workshop. Sleep also opens the door to dreaming, that mysterious theater of the mind. In dreams, logic bends, time twists, and the brain weaves fragments of memory into strange new stories. Some scientists believe dreams are simply the byproduct of neurons firing at random. Others suggest they serve a purpose, helping us process emotions, rehearse for danger, or spark creativity. Artists, inventors, and thinkers throughout history have credited dreams with inspiration, from the melody of songs to the structure of molecules. And as you drift into your own dreams, you carry on a tradition as old as humanity, letting the sleeping brain wander into the unknown. But perhaps the brain's most astonishing quality is its plasticity, its ability to change and adapt throughout life. Once, scientists believed the brain was fixed after childhood. We now know it is never static. Children's brains are indeed more flexible, wiring themselves rapidly as they learn language, movement, and culture. But even in adulthood, new connections form, old ones strengthen, and unused ones fade. A pianist practicing scales strengthens networks in motor and auditory regions. A stroke patient relearning to walk recruits new pathways to bypass damaged ones. Even meditation, repeated thoughts, and focused habits reshape the very structure of the brain. And so, every choice you make Every thought you repeat is not just passing. It is sculpting the organ that defines who you are. This plasticity also carries into the twilight of life. The aging brain changes, it slows, memories may fade, but it is never silent. Older brains often become more efficient, relying on wisdom, pattern recognition, and long practice skills. New neurons can still appear in certain regions, like the hippocampus, defying the old belief that birth marked the end of brain growth. It is true that disease may come. Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, and others remind us of the brain's fragility, but even here resilience remains. Patients sometimes surprise doctors, adapting in ways once thought impossible. And in this resilience, the brain reveals its final secret. It is not just an organ of survival, but an organ of hope. When we step back and look at the brain as a whole, it is both humbling and awe-inspiring. It is flesh and blood, cells and chemistry, and yet it gives rise to art, to love, to the experience of beauty. It is finite, yet it holds infinite thoughts. It is fragile, yet it endures. And most mysterious of all, the brain is studying itself right now through you. The universe has given rise to countless stars, galaxies, and wonders, but through the brain, it has also given rise to wonder itself. So who are you, really? Are you nothing more than electrical signals and chemical flows? Or are you something more, something that emerges from the symphony of billions of neurons working together? Science offers pieces of the puzzle, but never the whole. The brain is an organ, yes, but it is also the birthplace of the self, the stage of consciousness, the keeper of memory, the dreamer of dreams. And perhaps the greatest mystery of all is not how the brain works, but how it becomes you. And so, as we reach the end of this journey, take a quiet moment to appreciate the marvel within your own skull. With every heartbeat, every breath, it works tirelessly, painting your world, shaping your choices, and holding the story of your life. You carry within you the most extraordinary structure in the universe, not because of its parts, but because of the life it makes possible. And tonight, as you rest, let that thought drift with you into sleep. Your brain is not just an organ. It is the cosmos folded into thought. Thank you for joining me in this calm exploration of the brain. If you enjoyed this journey, and if you'd like to drift with me into more hidden worlds, whether of cells, stars, or the mysteries of the mind, consider joining this channel. A simple like or subscribe helps this growing community continue its quiet explorations. Until next time, sleep well, and may your brain carry you gently through the landscapes of dream.